3:47 a.m., April 11th, 1945. Dr. Heinrich Mueller stood in his Messerschmitt laboratory just outside Munich, frantically feeding 847 pages of meticulous technical analysis into the roaring fireplace. Each page, a monument to 6 months of relentless work. Each diagram, a stark document of his utter failure, the subject of his torment. The counter-rotating propellers of the American P-38 Lightning, that damned twin-boom design. A blatant defiance of all established German engineering principles and its almost impossible 300-mile range. A feat that shouldn't exist with 1940s metallurgy. His hands trembling as he watched years of painstaking research turn to worthless ash. Outside, American forces were a mere 47 miles away and closing fast. In just 11 short hours, they would breach the gates of his advanced aviation research facility. But they would never find the devastating evidence of Germany's most profound humiliation. The undeniable proof that American aircraft designers had not only matched, but surpassed German engineering, creating technology so impossibly advanced that the only German response was to incinerate the damning proof of their abject failure. Think technology theft is a modern phenomenon? Corporate espionage? Industrial secrets? Think again. World War II was the original technology race. A desperate scramble for dominance in the skies and on the ground, and the P-38 Lightning became the aircraft that Germany desperately sought to understand, tried desperately to copy, and equally desperately tried to defeat, and in the end, failed utterly at all three. Dr. Heinrich Mueller, he wasn't just any engineer, he was Germany's top aircraft designer, the very man who refined and improved the legendary Me-109. The advisor consulted on the cutting-edge Me-262 jet. The man who had unfettered access to every captured Allied aircraft. If anyone could unlock the deepest, darkest secrets of the P-38, it was him. Hermann Göring himself personally assigned him to the daunting task, codenamed Project Fork, in September 1943. The name deliberately chosen because the P-38's distinctive twin-boom design resembled a massive, menacing fork piercing the very fabric of the sky. The mission, deceptively simple. Figure out how America built it. Figure out how to beat it, or better yet, figure out how to copy it and turn their own weapon against them. The initial German confidence was staggering, bordering on arrogance. German engineering, after all, had dominated Europe. Their tanks were undeniably superior, their optics unmatched, their metallurgy the unchallenged best in the world, or so they staunchly believed. When the first captured P-38F finally arrived at the Rechlin Flight Test Center on October 3, 1943, German test pilots openly laughed. Luftwaffe ace, Captain Franz Stigler, standing confidently next to Mueller, declared that the twin-boom design was utterly aerodynamically idiotic, that American engineers clearly didn't understand even the basic principles of proper aircraft design, that this ungainly, ugly, fork-tailed machine would be child's play to outmaneuver in a dogfight. Mueller nodded sagely. He agreed wholeheartedly. He was tragically wrong. They were all catastrophically wrong. The first test flight took place at 2:18 p.m. on October 7, 1943. Captain Stigler confidently took the captured P-38 to a seemingly unreachable 15,000 feet over the Bavarian countryside. Mueller watched intently from the ground. Binoculars pressed against his eyes, notepad clutched tightly in his hand. Stigler's mission was simple: to find weaknesses, to identify vulnerabilities, to prove conclusively German superiority. The radio suddenly crackled to life at 2:31 p.m. Stigler's voice dramatically changed, the cocky confidence completely gone. He uttered 4 chilling words that made Mueller's blood run icy cold. "This changes everything, everything." Stigler landed just 47 minutes later. He climbed slowly out of the cockpit in stunned, complete silence, walked directly to Mueller, and said something that Mueller would meticulously write in his diary that very night. "We cannot build this. We do not possess the industrial capacity. We do not have the required metallurgy. We do not have the necessary precision manufacturing capabilities. And even if, by some miracle, we had all 3, we are still a full 5 years behind." Mueller demanded excruciating details. What specifically had Stigler discovered at 15,000 feet that had so profoundly altered his assessment? Stigler's debriefing lasted an agonizing 3 hours. He described how the P-38 effortlessly climbed to altitude faster than any German fighter he had ever flown, how the controls remained responsive and surgically precise even at high altitudes where German fighters became notoriously sluggish and unresponsive, how the twin engines provided a critical redundancy that meant losing one engine didn't necessarily mean losing the entire aircraft and its pilot. But what truly shocked and disturbed Stigler most was something he felt deep in his bones, rather than something he simply saw: the uncanny build quality. Every control input produced an instantaneous, exact response. Absolutely no slop in the control cables, no disturbing vibration from poorly balanced propellers, no rough spots in the throttle movement. He said it felt disturbingly like flying a precision surgical instrument instead of a brutally functional combat aircraft designed for war. Stigler had flown countless Me-109s with barely 50 combat hours that already exhibited loose control sticks and temperamental engines prone to sputtering and stalling. This captured P-38, however, had visible combat damage all over the fuselage, bullet holes meticulously patched, battle scars from countless daring missions over the scorching sands of North Africa, and yet it flew smoother and more precisely than brand new German fighters fresh from the spotless factory floor. That's what shattered Stigler's unwavering confidence. It wasn't simply that the P-38 was exceptionally fast or exceptionally well armed or boasted an incredibly long range, but that American manufacturing quality was so incredibly consistent, so unwaveringly reliable, that a battle-damaged aircraft still performed demonstrably better than pristine, brand-new German fighters. It suggested a level of advanced industrial quality control that Germany simply didn't possess and couldn't even imagine. But Mueller stubbornly refused to believe it. Not yet. He was Germany's top aircraft designer. He commanded vast resources. He possessed undeniable talent. He had the very best engineers in all of Europe working tirelessly under him. Project Fork expanded dramatically. By November 1943, Mueller commanded a dedicated team of 47 top-tier engineers working full-time and around the clock to meticulously reverse engineer every single aspect of the P-38. They disassembled everything: engines, propellers, fuel systems, hydraulics, even the most complex electronics. They painstakingly measured tolerances down to mind-boggling thousandths of an inch. They meticulously analyzed every alloy, every weld, every rivet, and with each agonizing measurement, each painstaking analysis, each soul-crushing test, the chilling horror grew exponentially. Because what they were uncovering wasn't just advanced engineering, it was a completely, radically different philosophy of manufacturing, a philosophy that Germany couldn't possibly replicate, even if they had a decade to try. Let me tell you what utterly broke Mueller first: the seemingly simple counter-rotating propellers. On paper, the concept is elegant, deceptively simple. Two propellers spinning in precisely opposite directions to effectively cancel out the torque effect. German engineers understood the underlying theory perfectly well. They had even proposed strikingly similar designs themselves back in 1938, but theoretical design and flawless execution are two completely different universes. The P-38's powerful Allison V1710 engines drove propellers that spun relentlessly inward toward each other. The left engine propeller rotated clockwise. The right engine propeller rotated counterclockwise. This effectively cancelled the bothersome torque effect that made single-engine fighters constantly want to roll dramatically to the left during takeoff and maneuvers. But making this deceptively simple concept actually work required a level of breathtaking precision manufacturing that utterly stunned and demoralized Mueller's already shaken team. The propeller gearboxes, for instance, had to be perfect mirrors of each other. The incredibly complex gear teeth had to be meticulously machined to tolerances of just 0.003 inches. 3/10,000ths of an inch. Any deviation, however minuscule, and the gears would wear unevenly, vibrate uncontrollably, and eventually fail catastrophically at a potentially fatal 25,000 feet. Mueller's team painstakingly measured the captured gearbox using Germany's best precision tools, and the results were horrifying. The American manufacturing consistency was almost inhuman. Every single gear tooth was flawlessly within tolerance. Every bearing surface was mirror smooth. Every oil channel was perfectly drilled. Mueller dejectedly wrote in his December 1943 report to a furious Göring that this almost unbelievable level of manufacturing precision strongly suggested assembly line production, but with a level of quality control that exceeded even Germany's painstakingly custom-built aircraft. That's when the real horror finally hit home. This wasn't simply a meticulously crafted prototype. This wasn't a limited production experimental aircraft destined to remain a curiosity. This was mass production. American factories were building P-38s with this level of precision on assembly lines in Burbank, California, building them fast, building them consistently, building them in numbers that made German production look like a hobby shop. Intelligence reports confirmed it. Lockheed's Burbank plant was producing 17 P-38s per day by late 1943. 17 per day. With counter-rotating propellers that required precision Germany couldn't achieve even in their best research facilities. Dr. Heinrich Mueller obtained photographs of the Burbank assembly line through intelligence channels in January 1944. The photos showed something that shouldn't have been possible. Women workers, many of whom had never worked in manufacturing before the war, were assembling complex aircraft components on moving assembly lines. Rosie the Riveter wasn't propaganda. She was building P-38s with precision that exceeded German master craftsmen. The photographs showed quality control stations every 50 feet along the assembly line. Inspectors checking tolerances, testing components, rejecting anything that didn't meet specifications. This level of systematic quality control didn't exist in German aircraft production. One photo particularly haunted Dr. Heinrich Mueller, a young woman, probably 19 or 20 years old, installing a propeller gearbox assembly. The caption identified her as Margaret Sullivan from Pasadena, California. 6 months of training, and she was installing components that German engineers with decades of experience struggled to manufacture. How was that possible? The answer was in the American production philosophy. They had broken down complex tasks into simple, repeatable steps, created jigs and fixtures that ensured consistency, developed training programs that could turn inexperienced workers into precision assemblers in weeks instead of years. Germany relied on skilled craftsmen. America had industrialized skill itself. Dr. Heinrich Mueller showed these photos to his team in February 1944. He asked them to estimate how long it would take Germany to implement similar assembly line processes for the Me-109. The answers ranged from 2 years to 5 years, and that was just to match 1943 American production methods. By the time Germany caught up, America would have advanced even further. It was a race Germany couldn't win, not because German engineers were inferior, but because the entire American industrial system was oriented toward mass production. With high quality, Germany's system was oriented toward craftsmanship, with limited production. Two fundamentally different philosophies, and in total war, mass production wins. Dr. Heinrich Mueller tried anyway. Project Fork Phase 2 began in January 1944. The goal was to build a functional counter-rotating gearbox, using German manufacturing. They had the blueprints from the captured aircraft, they had measurements, they had metallurgical analysis. They had Germany's best machinists working around the clock. 3 months later, they had a gearbox that worked. For 11 minutes, at 11:47 a.m. on March 23, 1944, the test gearbox installed in a modified Me-109 failed catastrophically at 8,000 feet over Rechlin. The test pilot, Lieutenant Hans Bauer, barely made it back alive. The gear teeth had worn unevenly, creating vibrations that shattered the gearbox housing and sent metal fragments. Through the engine cowling, Lieutenant Bauer's report was 3 words long. Americans build magic, but the counter-rotating propellers weren't even the worst part. The twin-boom design itself was the real nightmare. Dr. Heinrich Mueller's team spent 4 months trying to understand why it worked. German aerodynamic theory said the design should be unstable. The central nacelle, holding the pilot and guns, was connected to the tail by 2 long booms, extending back from the engines. This created torsional stress points that should have caused structural failure during high-speed maneuvers, didn't. The P-38 could pull 6.5 G turns at 350 mph without structural damage. Dr. Heinrich Mueller's stress analysis showed the boom should fail at 4.2 Gs. So why weren't they failing? The answer was in the metallurgy, and it made Dr. Heinrich Mueller want to quit. The Americans were using aluminum alloys. That Germany didn't have Alcoa 24S aluminum alloy developed specifically for aircraft. The captured P-38's boom sections showed a yield strength of 47,000 pounds per square inch. German aluminum alloys topped out at 38,000 psi. That 9,000 psi difference meant American aircraft could handle 23% more stress with the same weight. Dr. Heinrich Mueller's February 1944 report to Hermann Göring included one devastating sentence: "Even if we perfect the design, we cannot build it with available German materials." Intelligence reports made it worse. By mid-1944, German spies confirmed that Alcoa's American plants were producing this advanced aluminum at a rate of £2.3 million per month. Just for aircraft, Germany's entire aluminum production, for all purposes, was £1.8 million per month. America was making more advanced aircraft-grade aluminum than Germany's total aluminum output. The industrial gap wasn't just large, it was a chasm that was getting wider every month. Dr. Heinrich Mueller knew it, his team knew it, and the psychological weight of that knowledge was crushing. One of Dr. Heinrich Mueller's engineers, a metallurgist named Dr. Ernst Keller, had a breakdown in March 1944 after analyzing the aluminum samples. He had spent 6 weeks trying to replicate the Alcoa 24S alloy using German materials and processes. Every batch failed quality tests: too brittle, or too soft, or riddled with microscopic impurities that weakened the structure. Dr. Keller's final report included a section that Dr. Heinrich Mueller tried to have redacted before it reached Hermann Göring. Dr. Keller had calculated that replicating American aluminum alloy production would require retooling Germany's entire aluminum industry. New furnaces, new quality control systems, new training for thousands of workers, and even if Germany started immediately, it would take a minimum of 3 years to match 1943 American production levels. 3 years, by which point America would be even further ahead. Dr. Keller wrote that trying to catch up to American materials science while fighting a two-front war was mathematically impossible. The resources didn't exist. The industrial capacity didn't exist. The time didn't exist. He concluded his report with a single, devastating recommendation. Germany should negotiate peace terms while still possessing some bargaining power, because continuing to fight against an enemy with this level of industrial superiority would inevitably lead to total defeat. Hermann Göring had Dr. Keller reassigned to a weather station in Norway for that assessment. But Dr. Heinrich Mueller kept a copy of the report because Dr. Keller was right, and Dr. Heinrich Mueller knew it. Project Fork entered its final phase in June 1944. Dr. Heinrich Mueller abandoned trying to copy the P-38. Instead, he focused on finding ways to defeat it in combat, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, anything German pilots could exploit. His team ran mock dogfights using the captured P-38 against Germany's best fighters, Me-109G6, FW-190A8, even the brand-new TA-152 high-altitude interceptor. The results? Humiliating. In 73 simulated dogfights between June and August of 1944, the P-38 won 68 German fighters, just 5, and those 5 victories demanded perfect conditions, altitude advantage, a surprise attack, a numerical superiority of at least 3-1. The P-38's advantages were overwhelming. At altitudes above 20,000 feet, the twin turbocharged Allison engines gave it power that German fighters simply couldn't match. The counter-rotating propellers eliminated torque roll, making it incredibly stable in turns. The tricycle landing gear made takeoffs and landings safer and faster. The concentrated nose armament, 1 20mm cannon and 4 50-caliber machine guns, all firing through the propeller arc without needing synchronization, meant devastating firepower. Dr. Heinrich Mueller's August 1944 combat analysis report included a section titled Recommended Tactics Against P-38 Lightning. The entire section was 2 words: avoid contact. But Hermann Göring didn't want to hear avoid contact. He wanted solutions. He wanted a German aircraft that could beat the P-38. He wanted Project Fork to deliver results, not excuses. So Dr. Mueller tried one last, desperate approach. He proposed a hybrid design, take the Me-109's proven airframe and ADD some P-38 innovations that Germany could actually manufacture. Twin vertical stabilizers for better stability, improved turbochargers for high-altitude performance, more concentrated armament. The proposal went to Messerschmitt's Advanced Aviation Research Facility in September 1944. It was rejected in 11 days. Not enough resources. Too late in the war. Focus on jets instead. That rejection broke something in Dr. Mueller. He had spent 11 months trying to understand the P-38, trying to copy it, trying to beat it. And he had failed at everything. The counter-rotating propellers were too precise, the twin boom structure demanded better materials, their industrial production capacity was unreachable. And even knowing all of this, even having a captured aircraft to study, Germany couldn't close the gap. The Americans weren't just ahead in one area, they were ahead in design, metallurgy, precision manufacturing, and mass production. It was comprehensive superiority. Dr. Mueller's diary entries from October 1944 are heartbreaking to read. They were declassified in 1983. October 7th, 1 year after the first test flight. He wrote that the P-38 represented everything wrong with German strategic planning. Germany had focused on quality over quantity, on making the best individual aircraft instead of the best production system, on brilliant engineers working in small teams, instead of industrial processes that could scale. America had done the opposite, and America was winning because of it. October 19th, 1944. Dr. Mueller wrote one sentence that summarized everything. "We are not losing to better pilots. We are losing to better factories." By December 1944, Project Fork was unofficially dead. Dr. Mueller kept a small team analyzing intelligence reports about P-38 operations, but the reverse engineering had stopped. The combat analysis had stopped. Everyone knew the war was lost. The only question was, when? Dr. Mueller's final official report was dated January 15th, 1945. 53 pages, documenting everything Project Fork had learned, the technical specifications, the manufacturing requirements, the metallurgical analysis, the combat performance data. And on the final page, a single recommendation: Germany should focus defensive resources on areas where P-38 operations are unlikely, because defending against them is resource-intensive and ultimately futile. Hermann Goering read the report, and according to declassified records, he exploded, called Dr. Mueller a defeatist, accused him of sabotaging German morale, threatened to have him arrested for spreading enemy propaganda. Dr. Mueller was removed from Project Fork on January 23, 1945, reassigned to a meaningless administrative role. His team was disbanded. The captured P-38 was sent to a storage facility. The 847 pages of analysis, the 11 months of work, the discoveries that could have changed German strategy earlier, all of it was filed away and forgotten. Except Dr. Mueller didn't forget. He kept his personal copies, his notes, his measurements, his conclusions, because he was still a scientist, still an engineer, still someone who believed documentation mattered. But as American forces pushed into Germany in March and April of 1945, Dr. Mueller realized those documents were dangerous. If the Americans captured them, they would see everything Germany had learned about the P-38, every weakness they had searched for and couldn't find, every strength they had tried to copy and failed. It would be the ultimate humiliation. Documented proof that Germany's top aircraft designer had spent 11 months trying to understand American engineering and concluded it was impossible to replicate. That wasn't just a technical failure. It was an ideological failure. Proof that American industrial democracy had defeated German centralized control. So on April 11, 1945, with American forces 47 miles away, Dr. Mueller made his decision. At 3:47 a.m., he began burning everything. The technical drawings went first, detailed schematics of the counter-rotating propellers, stress analysis of the twin boom structure, metallurgical reports on the aluminum alloys, then the combat analysis documents, the 73 mock dogfight results, the recommended tactics that boiled down to avoid contact, the industrial production comparisons that showed America building P-38s faster than Germany could shoot them down. 847 pages, 11 months of work. All of it turned to ash in his laboratory fireplace. Dr. Mueller's secretary, Brenda Hoffman, later told Allied interrogators that he cried while burning the documents. that he kept saying he was destroying the only honest German analysis of American aircraft superiority, that future engineers would need this information to understand what went wrong, but he burned it anyway, because the shame was too great. The admission of inferiority was too complete. Better to destroy the evidence than let it be captured and studied and used as proof that German engineering had been comprehensively defeated. At 2:34 p.m. that same day, April 11th, 1945, elements of the U.S. Ninth Army reached Dr. Mueller's laboratory. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Davies led the investigative team. They found Dr. Mueller sitting at his desk, staring at the fireplace. The ashes were still warm. Lieutenant Colonel Davies's report, filed April 13th, described finding fragments of technical drawings in the ash, burned edges, partial diagrams, enough to see they were aircraft-related, but not enough to reconstruct. Lieutenant Colonel Davies asked Dr. Mueller what he had burned. Dr. Mueller answered, in perfect English. He said he had burned proof that Germany lost the war in 1943 and didn't even know it, that the P-38 Lightning represented an industrial and technological gap that Germany could never close, and that documenting that failure felt like betraying the fatherland. Ethan asked why Dr. Mueller hadn't destroyed everything completely. Why leave even ash evidence? Dr. Mueller's answer became famous among military historians who studied post-war interrogations. He said burning the documents felt like burning his children. He couldn't make himself destroy them completely, couldn't reduce them to nothing. So, he left the ashes, a gravestone for German aviation engineering, a memorial to the project that proved American superiority. Ethan ordered the ashes collected and sent to U.S. intelligence for analysis. But there wasn't enough left to reconstruct meaningful information. The secrets had been destroyed. The shame had been hidden, or so Dr. Mueller thought. But here's what Dr. Mueller didn't know. The Americans didn't need his documents, because they already knew everything he had discovered. Lockheed's engineering team had anticipated every German attempt to copy the P-38. They had designed it to be difficult to replicate, specifically because they understood American manufacturing advantages. The counter-rotating propellers required precision that only American mass production could achieve. The aluminum alloys required industrial capacity that only American aluminum plants could supply. The twin-boom design required stress calculations that only American engineering education produced consistently. It wasn't accidental superiority. It was designed superiority, engineered into every specification. Kevin Johnson, the Lockheed engineer who led P-38 design, said in a 1952 interview that they designed it knowing Germany couldn't copy it, even with blueprints, that the real secret wasn't any single technology. It was the integration of American industrial capacity, material science, precision manufacturing, and engineering education. Germany could steal one piece, but they couldn't steal the entire system. And without the system, the pieces didn't work. Dr. Mueller had spent 11 months discovering exactly that, and it had broken him completely. The P-38 Lightning flew combat missions until the end of World War II. Total production reached 10,037 aircraft, built in Burbank, California, by workers who probably never thought of themselves as weapons of psychological warfare. But that's exactly what they were. Every P-38 that appeared over Germany, over Japan, over any Axis territory, was a flying demonstration of American industrial superiority. A twin-engine, twin-boom, counter-rotating propeller message. That said, you cannot build this, you cannot beat this, you cannot win this war. Dr. Heinrich Mueller survived the war. He was interrogated extensively by Allied intelligence. His testimony helped document German aviation development and the failures of their reverse engineering programs. He never worked in aircraft design again. According to his daughter, interviewed in 1978, he refused to discuss the P-38 for the rest of his life, said it represented his greatest professional failure. Not that he couldn't copy it, but that he understood too late how comprehensively Germany had been outmatched industrially. He died in 1969, age 73. His obituary in the Deutsche Zeitung mentioned his work on the Me-109, but didn't mention Project Fork. The burned documents, the 11 months of failure, because some shames are too great to memorialize, but the story of those burned documents tells you everything about what the P-38 Lightning represented. It wasn't just a fighter aircraft. It was a statement of industrial philosophy. America's factories, filled with Rosie the Riveters, and workers who had never built aircraft before 1940, were producing technology so advanced that Germany's top engineers couldn't replicate it, with unlimited time and resources. That's not just a tactical advantage. That's a strategic checkmate, and Dr. Mueller knew it. That's why he burned the evidence, because some truths are too devastating to document. If this story made you feel pride in the greatest generation's industrial achievement, that YouTube heart below isn't just a like button, it's a super thanks. It's how you tell YouTube that history like this matters, that the arsenal of democracy deserves to be remembered, not just for courage in combat, but for engineering excellence that enemies literally couldn't comprehend. Corporate documentaries won't tell you about Dr. Mueller burning 8x47 pages of failure analysis. They won't show you the psychological warfare of industrial superiority. They'll show you dogfights and explosions and miss the real story. The story of American workers in Burbank, building technology that German engineers called magic. Your super thanks says these stories matter, that the workers at Lockheed deserve recognition alongside the pilots. That understanding how we won is just as important as knowing that we won. You're not just supporting a channel, you're preserving the memory of an industrial achievement that saved the world. The freedom you have today to watch this video, to learn this history, to feel pride in American engineering, exists because factories in California built aircraft that enemies couldn't copy, even when they had physical examples to study. That's not propaganda. That's documented history, verified by the man who tried hardest to prove otherwise and failed so completely, he burned the evidence. Dr. Heinrich Mueller's burned documents are the ultimate compliment to American engineering. When your enemy's best response to your technology is to destroy proof they studied it, you've achieved more than military superiority. You've achieved psychological dominance. The P-38 Lightning didn't just win battles, it won minds. It broke the confidence of the Luftwaffe's top designers. It proved that democracy's distributed manufacturing could outpace dictatorship's centralized control. Every time you see a photo of a P-38 Lightning with its distinctive twin booms, remember what it represented to Dr. Heinrich Mueller. Remember the 847 pages he burned at 3:47 a.m. on April 11, 1945. Remember that American engineering was so far ahead that Germany's response was to hide the evidence of the gap. Remember the workers in Burbank who built these aircraft without knowing they were creating technology that would be called magic by enemy engineers. Remember that the arsenal of democracy wasn't just about quantity. It was about quality so high that quantity became possible. That's the real story of the P-38, not just what it did in combat, but what it represented about two completely different approaches to industrial war. And one of those approaches burned its research rather than admit defeat. Drop a comment if your family worked in aircraft production during World War II, because the unsung heroes, the men and women who built those P-38 Lightnings back in California, were just as critical to the Allied victory as the daring pilots who soared them over Germany. They were the driving force, the very reason Dr. Heinrich Mueller so desperately burned his documents. They were the ultimate cause for Project Fork's utter failure, the undeniable explanation for America's triumph in the technological arms race of the skies. And their story, their contributions, deserve to be told right alongside those of the celebrated combat aces and the vaunted battlefield heroes. So it comes down to this: Team P-38 Lightning versus any German fighter the Luftwaffe could throw at it. Which one do you think would win? And, more importantly, why? Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm really interested to hear what you all think.